Welcome back, everyone. Once again, it's Raphael on the microphone here, and we're talking about how far you can actually get with a salary of about 100,000, the magic number that many of you might be aiming for in Zurich. In the last video, and feel free to recap that, we talked a bit about how much net salary is that really, because as you know, in Switzerland, like in every other country in the world, pretty much, you have to pay income tax, you have to pay social security, and you also have to pay health insurance. So to do a short recap, you are about 30 to 35 years old. That's our assumption. You're single, you don't have kids yet. If you do, the numbers will definitely be different. So you have to redo the math, just as kind of a warning. And also, we're assuming you live and work in the city of Zurich. Why is this important? Well, because today we're going to talk about rent, but also because it actually influences your tax rate and therefore your net salary. Because in Switzerland, the amount of tax you have to pay is highly dependent on where exactly you live in Switzerland. So in the last video, we came up with the result of from your 100K Swiss francs, you have about 70,800 Swiss francs still left. That's about 5,900 from your original 8,333 per month. Now, this may sound like a lot. You might say, well, I still have like 6,000 per month left. Isn't that quite a lot? Well, yeah, it sounds like a lot, but is it really a lot if you also account for rent? And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video, about the rent you can realistically expect as an expat moving to Switzerland, or specifically Zurich, in 2024. And keep in mind now it's May 2024, so if you look at these numbers or this video a bit later, the numbers might be different. They're probably a bit less in your favor, like higher cost. But who knows, with the economic corrections that we have this year, maybe the rents will also actually be a bit lower. Let's see about that. I personally always like to look into some real world data, and this time we're going to do exactly that. I'm on HomeGate, which is probably the most well-known website for real estate in Switzerland. It's not necessarily the one I would actually go to. I have a different favorite one, but I'm not going to talk about this now because this is a completely different topic. You can certainly use HomeGate in the beginning, at least to get a good orientation of what market prices are. I already filtered it here a bit because, as we said, you're single, so you don't need like a super big apartment. So I am already filtering here by rooms. I'm saying, yeah, maximum 2 rooms because as a single, reasonably, that's what you need. And as you can see, we already have 140 results. So that's looks like quite a lot. The market is somewhat liquid, but yeah, let's look into the details a bit. One thing that's really important about Zurich, I think, and that many expats and newcomers might get this wrong, is Zurich. You know, it's very often mentioned alongside of super big capital cities or big metropolitan areas like New York, London, Paris, and so on. But the main difference is that while Zurich is maybe similarly expensive like the other ones and definitely famous, it's actually not that big. You know, in Paris, it really makes a difference where you live in Paris or in Vienna or maybe in Munich, New York, and so on. Whereas Zurich, it's a relatively small city. The city of Zurich, and that's also what you can see here in the blue border, that's the actual city of Zurich, and around it is the canton of Zurich. So the actual city, it doesn't even have 500,000 people living there. And yeah, it's relatively compact. I would say there is not really a bad neighborhood of the Zurich city. Feel free to disagree. There's certainly some neighborhoods which are like slightly shady. Personally, I lived in one of those in the beginning, which is in the north of Zurich. It's called Oerlikon. But then what many people do and what I wouldn't necessarily do, what I personally didn't do, but I see a lot of friends from university are doing it, and I would really caution you against doing the same, is they move sort of to the center of Zurich, which is roughly here. So for example, there's this really famous Europa Allee, which is like in this area. Some people move there because the Google headquarters is there, maybe because they work for Google. In that case, yeah, maybe it makes sense. And of course, it's right next to the central train station, and there's super high density here of offices and everything else. So chances are your employer might actually have an office here, or something else that is interesting to you might be here, and definitely you can go everywhere else. But also this area is super dense and crowded and tends to be loud. And if there is an unsafe part of Zurich, it would probably also be here, at least statistically speaking. Zurich is a super safe city. But if you're looking for the trouble, you might actually find it around here, around Langstrasse, for example. You can see there's some less expensive stuff like 1700 or ish, and in 2000, or even 1500-ish here. But the prices can quickly go up for like a one-person apartment, 3,800 here, or even 5,600, and so on. These are, probably luxurious apartments, but still, you can see the prices here, they're relatively high. And also public transportation is really good. So even if you live a bit further outside somewhere, and you need to go to some office, then it typically takes, I would say, 20, 30 minutes maximum, for example, to go from here in the north to the center. And then also it's worth mentioning, not all the offices are in the center. So even if you're actually one of those people who have to go to the office like every day or so, it's not necessarily in the center. Coincidentally, the office of my employer, my first employer in Switzerland, was actually also in this area up here. In the end, I think it's a bit more about lifestyle. So, for example, some people, they really like being right around here, around the Zurich Lake, be it on the western side, on the eastern side. It's really nice to have these two sides here, to have the Chinese garden here, for example, or the Mythenquai on this side. And then, of course, some people like to save money, so they might be somewhere more a bit on the outskirts. Tendentially, it's like the farther outside you are, the less expensive it gets. But of course, also there's a longer commute time. And especially if you sometimes need to go somewhere outside of Zurich, this might be actually a bigger difference, because then typically you will first need to go to the center of Zurich, and then you might need to go somewhere completely different, like for example, to Basel or to Bern, or maybe down to Lucerne or even Geneva, depending on what you do. Keep this in mind. It can sometimes take 2 to 3 hours by public transportation, at least, to cross Switzerland. And in this case, it might be worth to be closer to be at the central station, or also the Oerlikon station, which is a very big train station. Or maybe if you work internationally as a consultant, maybe then actually being close to the airport, it might be worth it as well. But of course, keep in mind, you should really think twice about being in the area where the planes depart and land. So with this in mind, let's maybe look at some other neighborhoods. I said in the beginning, I used to live here in the northeast, actually sort of halfway towards the airport, and also close to where the Swiss national, the German-speaking Swiss national radio is located here. You can see here, there's also a fair share of apartments available. And typically here, you can maybe find something in the ballpark of, I would say here, this is maybe an example, 1,600 something. Actually, looking at this closer, this is a very small room. It's probably a flat share. Or 1,800 something, closer to 2,000 maybe. These are probably good ballpark numbers. You can often find something for around 2,000 Swiss francs per month as a single person. And then, of course, you can always find something cheaper, but very often these apartments are not that nice, be it because they're relatively old, or because they just lack something, like you have to share a washing machine with somebody else, and so on. And of course, if you want something bigger, then you might actually end up more like in the area of 3,000 Swiss francs, but that would be rather for either something on the more luxurious end, or something much bigger if you have a family. So let's summarize a bit. As I told you, rent, of course, varies a lot by comfort, location, and size that you're looking for. You can live in the Kreis 1. Maybe it's a good idea in the first year or so, but it will be expensive. Also, having a really nice kitchen will be more expensive. Not sharing a washing machine, but having one for yourself, it all will add to the monthly bill. And most importantly, sharing a flat versus having your own flat where you do not share the kitchen, do not share the bathroom, that's going to make a big difference. It can actually be a good idea, depending on how you feel about this, and also maybe your age, if you have a partner and so on, to share an apartment with somebody in the first year. It might help you to get started, to get to know more people. So I'm assuming you're renting some not very large 1 to 2 room apartment, something maybe around 40 square meters, which should be enough for 1 bedroom plus 1 home office room, or respective areas of a very large studio apartment. Both exist in Zurich. It's a bit up to you if you want to have 2 separate rooms. Typically, it doesn't make such a big difference in price, whether it's 1 or 2 rooms. If it's the same square meters, it's really the price is more dependent on the total area of the apartment, and of course things like location and so on. And this month, I would say on average, you can calculate at least with 2,100 Swiss francs per month. As you've seen, you can find something cheaper. You can also find something more expensive. It really depends on your individual circumstances. But if you want a rough price model, this is the number I would go for right now. And of course, keep in mind, this will definitely change over time. Overall, at the end of our month, remember we said in the beginning, we had about 5,900. Now we have basically 3,800 Swiss francs left at the end of the month, but we still need to pay for food and quite a few other things. So you might still say, well, sounds good. I can definitely eat for 3,800 per month. But yeah, let's see how much will really be left at the end of the month when everything that you typically need is deducted. That's it for today. We talked in detail about the different neighborhoods in Zurich and roughly what you can assume as a number for your budget in terms of rent in the city of Zurich. If you want to find out how you will end up spending the remaining 3,800 that in our sample calculation that you still have left at the end of the month for everything else like food and further insurances and so on, see you in the next video. And of course, if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you click that like button. And if you want to get notified about the next part of our series, click the subscribe button and don't forget the notification bell. See you in the next video.